You're on Popok Live, only on the Midas Touch Network. You know, when I was putting the show together today, I had a lot of things to talk about. I didn't know, first of all, was I going to talk about the downed airplane and helicopter and Donald Trump's response to it? Or was I just going to talk in general about the chaos that is just encircling this particular administration? We're 2 weeks in, and there are already, by my count and the count of Norm Eisen, 31 lawsuits in federal courts, most of them in the District of Columbia, but not only the District of Columbia, against Donald Trump and his administration. Now, I have a prediction. It's the Popok quotient. I said that there was going to be 4,000 lawsuits filed against the Trump administration in his 4 years. That averages about 3 and change per day. We're at over 2 filings a day already in his first couple of weeks, and more to come. And I know there was a lot of worry among my law colleagues in public sector and public interest groups about whether we, and I mean the collective we here, not the Kash Patel, we is not I, we. I said that we talked about, well, are we going to be as successful in the courts as we were in the first Trump administration when more than 1,000 lawsuits were filed? And in that, the batting average for the attorneys general, the public interest groups, including ones that didn't, I mean, so there's some today that didn't even exist back then. We'll talk about them next. But with that group of interested parties, public interest parties, not-for-profits, attorneys general, what was their batting average then? It was over 800. It was 80% success rate, which is extraordinary. And we thought, well, is it going to be the same today? We've got Trumper federal judges. We got a Supreme Court that's leaning over to the right. Are we going to be just as successful now? No, we're going to be more successful because Donald Trump has to operate his government through executive orders. And executive orders are, for us, a gift, because it means that when he colors outside the lines and violates the Constitution, the separation of powers, the Administrative Procedures Act, and all the rest, and the First Amendment, or all four or five of those things at the same time, because he just can't get his executive orders right, because he has no intention to comply with the law or stay in his lane as the executive branch. He wants to be the legislative branch. He wants to be the judicial branch. He wants to be all the branches. So that's a gift to us. When you govern by fiat, by way of executive order, that means we're going to be in federal courts 2 to 3 times a day from now until the end of the Trump administration. And so I now have renewed enthusiasm, renewed energy about our abilities to nail Donald Trump, nail him to the ground, and to stop him and his most obscenely inhumane, unconstitutional of executive orders. You notice how quiet the MAGA Congress is because they can't legislate their way out of a wet paper bag. They don't have the numbers, literally. They don't have the majority they need in the House to originate bills. Look, listen to how, let's just listen for a second to how quiet MAGA Congress is. Yeah, they propose a bill here or there to act like they're relevant. Donald Trump doesn't even think they're relevant. Donald Trump and the chaos that has engulfed his entire administration in the first 2 weeks, for which he is not prepared, as you can tell, from the flip-flopping on let's freeze all of the funding to states and not-for-profits and cut off the flow of money to people who are downtrodden and impoverished and disadvantaged and disenfranchised. Let's do that. Oh, wait, let's not do that. Let's flip on that. Let's have tariffs that are non-negotiable until they are negotiable 24 hours later, and China, Canada, and Mexico eat our lunch in front of us. So this swirling chaos around Donald Trump is a reflection of his cesspool, right? His stew, his weird stew in his brain. That's one. The people that he has surrounded himself with, who are enablers, but not leaders, being led astray by people like Elon Musk. How many lawsuits am I going to talk about tonight that come down to Elon Musk's corrupt attempt to abuse power and steal our data and our privacy rights? I'm going to talk about many of them along the way. So Donald Trump already has terrible judgment, terrible instincts. And now he's surrounded himself with people who, if this is possible, are even worse. Are even worse. I thought his big bumper sticker campaign slogan was, I was president once and I could be president again. I was 45 and I'm 47 now. Okay, great. Watching this guy objectively, and I try to do that here on Popok Live, despite what people may think. Objectively watching the first 14 days of this administration, right? We're literally 2 weeks in. You'd never think this guy ever served in the White House ever before, right? That this is all trial and error, you know? But why? But why? Why? Because he's so loaded down with the Heritage Society, Project 2025, Federalist Society agenda, coupled with his own ethical conflicts, financial ethical conflicts, and those of his cabinet members, that they can't not only think straight, they can't legislate, they can't execute executive orders or law straight. You know, they are wrapped around their own axle because they're so conflicted as people, as leaders, ethically, financially, and the rest. And that leads to bad policy. And that leads to the Trump administration undermining our national security, our economic security. Like, who in their right mind? This is not a tabletop thought experiment in MBA class. Let's do this. Let's pull the U.S. out of the U.S. economy, not understanding apparently the contribution that the United States and its $5 trillion of funding, whether it's for entitlement programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, disability, and the rest, or whether it's funding to states to pay for programs, right? Like Meals on Wheels, or for seniors, or for children, or for the impoverished, or for arts groups, or fill in the blank. Every group, every one of them are people receiving a paycheck that contributes to our economy as well. So when you pull $2 or $3 trillion out of the economy and hope that the private sector steps in, that's not how an economy works. At the same time, as long as we're doing a tabletop exercise, which unfortunately we're not, we're actually doing live policy that impacts American lives. Let's also start a trade war with 3 countries that are responsible for 40% of our imports: Canada, Mexico, for which we share a border, and China. Let's do that. And let's tariff our way to a better economy, citing William McKinley, the 25th president, who figured out early on that that doesn't work. Now, Donald Trump's theory is, I'll use tariffs to replace income tax. How's that? No, it's not going to work. You've got a $5 trillion a year, five with a sorry, not five with a T, trillion with a T, $1 trillion amount of money that the national government has to dole out, has to take in from somewhere. That's from Internal Revenue Service collection. Donald Trump says we need an external revenue service. We need to use tariff. You could never tariff enough to collect $5 trillion. Do the math, man. But this is what happens when you have a failed family office real estate developer who went bankrupt a half a dozen times, who found a way to lose money running an American casino, running the national government as if it's one of his failed businesses. But the government, as most presidents have found out, and all of them, no matter where they came from, military, business, career, public service, or these business people, they find out very simply or very easily, this is not a business. We're not the United States of America, Inc., despite Elon Musk trying to patent and trademark that name. We're a government by the people and for the people that has, things like social safety net and social programs that people rely on and that you can't cut off. And then on top of that, besides the trade war, let's take American diplomacy and throw it into the trash by getting rid of U.S. aid. And the reason that U.S. aid, which helps not only with poverty alleviation around the world, that helps with famine alleviation around the world, it also promotes U.S. economic interest around the world. That's why U.S. aid is a part of the State Department. It is diplomacy. But for Donald Trump and those around him, diplomacy is a 4-letter word. It's a liberal DEI thing that he has to get rid of. He has to destroy. Like every hammer, everyone's a nail. So Donald Trump sees DEI everywhere. We have to get rid of the corrupt liberal giving out condoms to Africa. That's not what U.S. aid does primarily. And Marco Rubio, of course, is an empty suit. We knew that when he ran for president. You know, he's all hat, no cattle, as some of my friends in Texas say. He goes along with it. Oh, that's okay. We'll just get rid of U.S. aid. So now the thing that Donald Trump never remembers is that behind every foreign aid package and foreign grant is an American job, is an American company supplying those hundreds of billions of dollars to Africa, India, the Sudan, and the rest. Where does he think it comes from? It comes from America and American companies that are distributing or manufacturing, right? And when you fight with Canada, you have to ignore the fact, apparently, that in the exchange of goods and services, that we're ahead on services. I mean, we were until Ontario's premier, Doug Ford, said, I'm not doing business with Elon Musk. Let me rip up that contract for Starlink, you know? And goods includes utilities, power, oil, coal, and things that help natural resources, rare metals, things that help our manufacture. That's the last place you want to pick a fight with. So I had all that. That's a backdrop. And then I started looking at the counter of how many cases would be filed. And we are up, and I'm probably missing a couple, to 31 cases that have already been filed in the first 2 weeks against the Trump administration. I'm going to cover many of the cases, including some recent ones and some new orders as we were going on the air, all against Donald Trump's administration. All of them. There's now 4 temporary restraining orders against Donald Trump's administration, 4 by 4 different federal judges. And we could also just have, I want to do a little tutorial here, a little Legal AF Law School breakout session on Popok Live. A little guidebook for you to understand the intersection of law and politics as I'm going to talk about it here for Donald Trump. Because there's some common denominators I don't want you to lose sight of. And I can give it to you from my perspective as a 35-year trial lawyer. Firstly, the majority of the cases that are being filed and where successful TROs, temporary restraining orders, are being obtained is in the District of Columbia, federal district judges. Where have we spent a lot of time talking about DC federal judges? Oh, right. They were the ones that handled the 1,600 Jan 6 cases, and none of them were very pleased when Donald Trump pardoned those criminals, right? And so now we're going to see the revenge of the Jan 6 federal judges who now are ready to rule against the Trump administration. I mean, that is the federal judge group that is going to be involved with more of these lawsuits that I'm going to talk about tonight and for the next 4 years than probably any other collection of judges. And they are ready to come back after Donald Trump. Retaliation? No. But these are not the judges that most of them who lean moderate to liberal that Donald Trump's going to want to be up against. And because the agencies and the departments of the Trump administration are the ones who are more likely the defendants, DC is the place to sue them. Not the only place, but it is the place to sue them. So think about DC. But also, as I've outlined, we'll talk about tonight, think about all the other blue states and blue federal courts where these 31 cases have been filed. Let me summarize it this way. I'll tell you where they haven't been filed. They haven't been filed in Texas, in Alabama, in Louisiana, in Mississippi, in Missouri. Okay? That's not where they're getting Florida. That's not where they're getting filed. Yeah? They're getting filed in New Hampshire. See if you can figure out the common denominator here. New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, the District of Columbia, Washington State, Oregon, California. See where I'm going with this? That's where these cases are being filed. Because not only are we more likely to find like-minded federal judges there, Independent judicial. I'm not making any aspersions against them. They're independent. They're as independent as the Texas judges that the Trump people always like to go to, the Texas two-step to get them to the Supreme Court. We got our own jig. We got our own dance that we can do. And that's where all the 31 are filed, from Maryland up to Rhode Island and California up to Washington State. And that's where they're going to stay, in DC. Yeah. Because the appellate courts is the next stop. And those appellate courts are also liberal, moderate appellate courts. The ninth in the West Coast. The first, the second, the third, running down the coast, the East Coast. The DC appellate court, Court of Appeals. That's where we're going to live or die. And so far, Donald Trump is dying. I told you at the top of this Popok Live that the success rate in the first term for public interest groups and attorneys general and the like against the Trump administration in 1,000 cases was about 80%. Right now, it's 1,000. They're batting 1,000 in the TROs and the future injunctions and on the other cases, because they're in the right and on the side of the angels, and Donald Trump is wrong. The other common denominator besides that, let me just complete the thought, because I know a lot of people in the chat are saying, yeah, but the Supremes. Yeah, the Supremes, and the Supremes on criminal and presidential power and immunity and insurrection ballot issues, terrible. But not all these cases are going to end up at the United States Supreme Court, because not all cases end up with the United States Supreme Court. There are tens of thousands of cases that are filed every year in state and federal court. 60 end up at the United States Supreme Court. When I graduated law school in whatever it was about 100. But this last 10 years, last 5 years under Roberts, it shrunk. They get 60 cases, which means the other 9,000 cases stay at the trial court or the appellate court level right below the Supreme Court. That's where justice is done on a daily basis. They can't take all the cases. They're not going to take all the cases. And that's why we're flooding. I'm going to talk to you about the 31. It's multiple lawsuits on the same issue by different affected parties in different courts on purpose, not because of total lack of coordination, although I don't think they're all coordinating, but they all know they're going to file on the same day. You know, when birthright citizenship was successfully attacked, there was a small group of attorneys general that went to Seattle, and there was another group, including the ACLU and all, that went to New Hampshire, and filed on the same day. Now they coordinated. Same thing on the federal funding freeze or the impoundment cases. There is a group of attorneys general that went in one jurisdiction. There's a group of affected parties that are not-for-profits that went to another jurisdiction. And that's another reason, because you want to try to, at a portfolio method, you want to try to balance this just in case you get a crappy judge. Let's just call it out for what it is. You get a crappy ruling. Oh, crap, I filed that one case there and I got that crappy ruling. I filed 5 cases on the same point in federal court and I got 4 good rulings and 1 bad ruling. That's the portfolio method. And then you can kind of drop your crappy case and take your other cases up on appeal. Get it? That's what we're watching. Mastery. And shout out to Norm Eisen, who's been on the Midas Touch Network a number of times, because he is behind a number of the lawsuits I'm going to talk about tonight. He's not just Security or that guy that shows up on some of our podcasts or being interviewed. He's a practicing lawyer the way I am. And he's out there with a new group that he's formed just since the election. He's got a couple of them that weren't even around in the first go around for Donald Trump. Donald Trump's first go around, the leading edge, the tip of the spear against him successfully were groups like the ACLU, Southern Poverty, NAACP. And believe me, they're ready. They're ready to come back in. But right now, I'll tell you who's leading the charge. Norm Eisen, Mark Elias, and about 22 different attorneys general around the country, including California, Washington, and New York. And that's who is the profile in courage right now. And they are winning. In fact, I'm going to go over a number of these cases just so you can keep track of them. The last thing I want to say before I take a short break is that another common denominator to keep an eye on is the type of causes of action, which are the claims within a lawsuit in federal court. We call them claims or causes of action. And you're going to see it's a broken record because Donald Trump's violations are basically fall into the same category. And so we're going to see the following types of causes of action or claims in all of these cases. One, a violation of the Administrative Procedures Act, because the departments or the agencies are violating through arbitrary and capricious actions the Administrative Procedures Act. You can't just do whatever the heck you want. You can't just let, like Elon Musk in to your data server or your email server and then have him turn it over to third parties that work outside the government, and that's okay. It's not okay. Not under the law, not under the privacy laws, not under the Internal Revenue Code, not under the Administrative Procedures Act. So you're going to hear a lot about the APA. So we're going to talk about that in a little more detail tonight. You're going to hear a lot about the First Amendment, because when Donald Trump says woke, when Donald Trump says DEI, he's on a mole hunt to get rid of DEI, to get rid of wokeness. That is an attack on somebody's because of the expression of their public expression, their freedom of expression. That is a First Amendment violation. You can't get rid of an FBI agent because you think he's a Democrat or his perceived that person's perceived political views. That is a First Amendment violation. So you'll see APA, you'll see First Amendment being used to not even funding being cut off because of a not-for-profit's perceived wokeness, whatever that means. I don't know what's woke about feeding a child. I don't know what's conservative about feeding a child. It's just a humane thing to do in our society of so much wealth is not to have impoverished, not to have illiteracy, not to have healthcare issues for children or anybody. And so that's not a woke issue. So when you cut off their funding because you think it's funny that their employees who are also poor or working poor, who miss a paycheck, who can't go shopping for food because you think it's hilarious, right? And you're doing it because of their ideology, that's a First Amendment violation. And then you have the whole constitutional bulwark, as Judge Ali Khan said today in her ruling against the Trump administration, which is there are things that are the province of Congress, not the executive branch, like the purse strings, the checkbook for the nation, appropriations, if you will, have to be originated and only originated in Congress, right? In the legislative branch, not the executive branch. The executive branch executes on the laws faithfully and complies with them, but not when you're Donald Trump. So you have an appropriations clause violation. You have a violation of separation of powers because you're coloring outside the lines and you're moving into the lane of Congress through executive orders. And I'll tell you who hates executive orders: Supreme Court. They look for any excuse to shoot down an executive order or attempt to rule by executive order, which is a good thing for us as well. So look for, once again, let's do it together. APA, Administrative Procedures Act, First Amendment violation over and over again. Third thing, separation of powers. Fourth, did I say appropriations? Appropriations by Congress. That you're going to see, that's the toolbox in all of the lawsuits that we're going to be talking about tonight and going forward. I'll add one other concept, two other concepts. We're going to talk a lot here and on Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Did I mention we have another YouTube channel in collaboration with the Midas Touch Network? If I mentioned that we're getting so close to 500,000 subscribers free in just the first 4.5 months, and that we need help over there, have I mentioned that? I'm doing it now. Thank you, Salty. Bring it up on the screen. All right. We're at already, I did the math before, Salty. We're at 65 million views of our content over there, independent from, but in collaboration with the Midas Touch Network. But we need more. You need more. Because the bigger we are on Legal AF, the more your voice is heard. And if I'm right, Well, I am right that there's 31 lawsuits already. But if I'm right that we're going to average 3 to 4 a day for the next 4 years, where else would you want to go but Legal AF to get 10 videos a day breaking down these suits? I downloaded so many lawsuits today about Donald Trump so I can do hot takes on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF that my printer broke. That's I'm just like not even running out of paper. It just went. We're gassed. We need another printer here. I'm gonna ask the suits for it. So here's the last bit of analysis. Class actions, and I got a lot of questions in my Blue Sky account on class actions for tonight. And John and Jane Doe lawsuits. What are they all about? Class actions, everybody wants one, are brought on behalf of a similarly situated group that have been injured, represented by a class representative. It is one way, but not the only way, to bring redress for injustice. A single plaintiff can obtain a temporary restraining order and block a federal statute without being with all the rest. But it helps. Most of the cases I'm going to talk to you about are not class action. Most of them are a group of people joined together, a long list, maybe 10, 12, 15, 20 states, or 15 or 20 public interest groups or not-for-profits, not class action. That's a different vehicle, has different requirements, different elements, different demands that you have to satisfy in order to have a class action suit to then represent a defined class. But there are a couple of class action suits that have been filed, and I want to talk about them tonight. And the second is when you have a Jane or John Doe as a plaintiff. What does that mean? That means you don't want you anonymize, you want to have anonymous the plaintiffs for their personal safety and security. And we have a number of cases now that have been brought against the Trump administration, no shock, who don't want their names out there, like FBI agents and others that work inside the government who are current government employees who are suing to stop Donald Trump and his worst instincts on these executive orders. And they want to do it in a nameless way. They're allowed to do it. There's conditions for it. I'm going to talk about a number of Jane and John Doe cases, but that's what we mean by that. Now, the court knows who they are. The lawyers on either side will ultimately, on the other side, will ultimately know who they are, but not yet, not quite yet. So that's the whole cover there. When I come back from our first commercial break, because fortunately, we do have sponsors that want our voice to be heard and are supportive of us. And in this day and age, when mainstream media is bending over backwards for Donald Trump and writing checks to him and silencing the voice of their reporters and editorial boards, we need more than ever sponsors who support our First Amendment expression, our commentary, our analysis. And we have them. And I appreciate that. There's other ways to support the show, right? We got Legal AF, the YouTube channel, which I just talked about. We've got Patreon for Legal AF, which you can also, we'll throw up in a minute. Patreon.com/legalaf, which got some, there it is. We got some great new content there as well that I curate. We got the Popok live show, which we just talked about. And then I have an announcement to make. We broke it on Saturday. But let me talk about it here for a minute, because it is an important part of my life, and I appreciate the support that I've always had with our loyal audience and listeners here on the Midas Touch Network. I've been here since, I think, day 2, since Midas Touch and the brothers founded Midas Touch, as people know. Legal AF was the first, kind of brother-sister podcast that came off of that Ben and I founded. And I've had a successful and enjoyable law career for the last 35 years. And I've been doing it right alongside my work for Midas Touch and Legal AF. But after the election, and with some personal changes in my own life with my family, as a lot of people know, we just welcomed our daughter, Francesca, in June. I decided to do a couple of things. One is to go really full-time working here with this audience and for this audience, Midas Touch Network, and helping to grow and build the Legal AF YouTube channel. I think it's that important. I don't want to be able to look my daughter in the eye and say, this is what daddy did after the election to help ensure our democracy. And I think it's that important. And the second thing was, was I going to continue to practice law? And I've decided to kind of, we have something going on here with Legal AF. And I want to, as a natural extension of that, I formed a firm on my own. It's called the Popok firm. And you can find it at www.thepopokfirm.com. I made this very, very simple. My 1-800 number, for instance, is 1-877-POPOK-AF. So creative. How did I come up with that? And that firm, my firm, is going to focus on helping those who need justice, those who have been injured, those who have been injured either in an accident, a major catastrophic accident of some sort, or a civil rights violation, or employment law discrimination, or anything else. And so whether it's a blue state or a red state or somewhere in between, and you or a loved one have been injured, anything related to auto, motor, truck, and all the other things, medical malpractice and the rest. And I'm associated with, or I'm collaborating with, an amazing team of rock star trial lawyers who are in all 50 states. This is why we were able to stand this up so quickly. And it's known as big auto injury attorneys, but don't be fooled by their name. They do so much more. These are people that in order to get into that club, they got recoveries in the billions of dollars on behalf of their clients. And so when we found that our DNA and Legal AF's DNA matched theirs, it was a perfect fit. And we've launched it now. So when you call up the 1-877-POPOK-AF, you'll get somebody picking up that phone and they'll be saying, the Popok firm and Big Auto, can we help? Free case consultation. Totally free. In fact, the representation is free. In other words, we don't get paid unless you do. It's a contingency fee environment, if you will. And there's no fee if we don't recover for you, the Popok firm. So take a look at that. And let's go to our first break. When we come back, I'm going to dive in to a good audit of these 31 cases around the country. This show is sponsored by Liquid IV. With 2025 came a new routine for me. Now I make it a point to get my workout and dog walking in well before the baby wakes up, so I can join her and my wife for a little quality morning time and feeding and reading. But I have to make sure that I have hydration in the tank at the top of my day to give me the energy I need to accomplish my day's goals. Whatever you do, come into your own way with extraordinary hydration from Liquid IV. Powered by Live Hydroscience, Liquid IV helps you break the mold with flavors like their new hydration multiplier sugar-free raspberry lemonade, a bright zero-sugar flavor combining notes of ripe, freshly picked raspberries and citrusy, zesty lemon. I love Liquid IV because of the convenience and taste. I just carry them with me in convenient sticks, tear, pour, and enjoy. Drinking it is so much better than having to search for a convenience store or carry around another plastic jug. I just pour Liquid IV into my reusable water bottle and I'm good to go. From gym to airport to meeting to recording, Liquid IV is leading the way with flavor innovation too. Not limiting your taste buds to whatever the fridge case has to offer. They offer true to fruit flavors that keep you hydrated. Find all your favorite hydration multiplier flavors on their website, from acai berry and lemon lime to pina colada, or choose from their line of sugar-free flavors like raspberry lemonade, white peach, and rainbow sherbet. Break the mold and own your ritual. Just one stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Powered by Live Hydroscience, an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. And Liquid IV has 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink and has 8 essential vitamins and nutrients, always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. Embrace your ritual with extraordinary hydration from Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code LEGALAF at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code LEGALAF at liquidiv.com. Your nighttime bedroom temperature has a huge impact on your sleep quality. If you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Miracle Made sheets are inspired by NASA and use silver-infused fabrics that are temperature regulating so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long, no matter the weather. So you get better sleep every night. These sheets are infused with silver that prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresh 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands and feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Sleeping on bacteria can clog your pores, causing breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Upgrade your sleep this year. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo code LegalAF at checkout, you'll get a free 3-piece towel set and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf and use the code LegalAF to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/legalaf to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Tip of the hat. Look at this ad reads. Normally Ben would say, Popok, great ad reads. But when I'm the only host, I'm like, okay, that was interesting. Tip of the hat and chef's kiss to our audience. We hit 17,000 in live chat just before the ad break, and I am humbled, and I appreciate it. I'm bringing my best, though. I'm bringing it all right here. Let me go to some questions that came up in an interesting piece of fan art that came up in my Blue Sky comments. Every Tuesday before the show, I'm on Blue Sky. You see my handle there, at MS Popok, and I'll post a notice about the show. I have a new photo up. Some people noticed. I took that photo and a photo shoot for this podcast, Popok Live, that we're launching. I might use it for the law firm too, but because I like the photo. But I posted, a notice about what I'm going to talk about tonight, and I say leave some questions down in comments, and I've covered a number of it now. Everybody's asking about class actions about the data breach that is at the heart of Elon Musk's Doge and getting the keys to our financial and treasury and IRS and entitlements and disbursement information. Sounds like a bad thing, right? Sounds like an illegal thing. Well, it is. And so, yes, there's already a series of class actions, at least 2 or 3 that I'm going to talk about. So we have that. A number of people asked, because they're understandably worried, what happens when court orders aren't followed? Who's going to enforce them? Which people? Is Trump's fill in the blank, FBI, marshals, or this or that going to enforce it? Let's start with, I'm not worried about this issue. I'm not saying you're wrong to worry about it. I'm just telling you that I have more confidence in the ability of federal judges, particularly, to use their inherent authority and the authority of federal statutes and law to impose contempt, including criminal contempt, and to jail government officials. Now, some people say, well, because let me just tell you how this works. Judges, I'll talk about 3 of them tonight, including Ali Khan, that just issued an order, Royce Lamperth, which just issued an order on injunction related to transgender females being placed back with men in prison. Sounds like a terrible, terrible violation of bodily autonomy and rights, and it is. And then some people always say, what if Trump's Bureau of Prison doesn't do it? Well, then if it's not complied with, a federal judge like Royce Lamperth in D.C., one of those judges who's looking to get back at the Trump administration, I assure you, for what happened during Jan 6th, is going to call onto the carpet and demand the appearance of the head of the Bureau of Prisons and or the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi, or whatever she gets confirmed, and have them say, you've been ordered by a federal judge to fill in the blank. You have not complied with that. I find you in contempt of court. And under that, I'm going to fine the government X amount a day. And if you don't comply within the next 24 hours, then I'm going to put you in jail. And then the federal marshals, could Donald Trump try to tell the federal marshals not to comply with a judge in a different branch of government? No, because those marshals work for the federal, a different branch. They don't report to, it's not like the FBI. The FBI reports to the executive branch. The federal marshals don't. nor the bailiffs that work in the courtroom or the courthouse. And there's a jail in every court, by the way. You don't have to go all the way to the Bureau of Prisons. You can put them in the Federal Detention Center and in different places. So there's a lot of things that judges can do. As crazy, insane, rogue, and depraved as Donald Trump is, I mean, batshit. I mean, he should be, if the cabinet around him and the vice president weren't meat puppets, they'd already be talking seriously about the 25th Amendment to have him removed and incapacitated. But you need to have a vice president that has, what's the word I'm looking for? Brass ones? Gravitas? You fill in the blank. Because he has to go along with the ride. He has to go along. You have to have a majority of your cabinet. And while they're not all lackeys of Donald Trump, there's not a majority that's going to support taking him out right now and putting J.D. Vance in, which I'm not sure is better to have a 39-year-old who thinks like Donald Trump does. And then you have to have 2/3 of Congress if he challenges it. I mean, we don't have that. So I like talking about the hypothetical, the magical of the 25th Amendment, but he is circling the drain here. This chaos that we're in the first 2 weeks does not bode well for him into the future. But it does give us the ability to regularly go into 2 and 3 times a day in a federal court and get orders against him, most of which will not be disturbed by appellate courts above, nor the Supreme Court. And you just have to flood the zone with these cases. To use sports metaphors, it's like, if you like hockey, it's like firing 1,000 pucks at the net. A number of them are going to go in. And that's why we see so many multiply filed cases about the same particular issue. So I'm not that, as an officer of the court myself, I'm admitted to practice in 2 major jurisdictions and then a number of federal courts. I'm not worried about the ability of a pissed off federal judge to get people into detention centers or jail if they are found in contempt. So we have that. Then some people said, I mentioned that Norm Eisen is involved with a number of the cases. They're like, it looks like it's only Norm Eisen. Where are the attorneys general? No, the attorneys general are there. They've already filed 2 major cases, one on birthright citizenship, and they've won it, and one on the federal impoundment or federal freeze issue. So the 18 to 22 attorneys general are doing just fine 2 weeks in, and we're going to be seeing and hearing more of them successfully here on the show. And then I had something that made me laugh out loud, which was a very genuine piece of fan art. I think that's what we call it, but a love note from a Canadian fan of ours to us in America. And it's a 2-part thing. It says, "Dear America, you'll be okay. Love, Canada." And then I think is there another photo with that? There was a 2-parter. Anyway, I saw that in Blue Sky and I'm like, oh, I got to get it to Salty. We got to get it up on the screen. We like fan art here. I've gotten a number of things mailed to me. I'm not asking for it. I'm just saying I've gotten a number of things mailed for me that I thought were adorable. So I really do appreciate that. So let me turn to what's not adorable, which is Donald Trump's executive orders and what's going on in federal courts. But I hope in the first 42 minutes, less the commercials of our show so far, that you're coming away with a certain amount of a solace and comfort that the federal courts and the ones we're picking know what they're doing. And we're going to tie up and tie down the Trump administration successfully over the next 4 years. And we're only getting better at it. It's like AI, except it's just intelligence. We're getting better at where to file, how to file, the claims to file, the motion practice, and the rest. Because we already had a dress rehearsal in the first Trump administration. And so, which I was only around for Legal AF anyway, for like the tail end, right? But now we're here together as a community in Popok Live too. Let's talk about the 3 major temporary restraining orders already issued and the other cases of the 31 that I thought were very, very interesting. Birthright citizenship. People are like, we haven't talked about that in a while. What's going on with that, Popok? Well, we've already got, at least, and it's not just the 3 that were originally filed in New Hampshire, Seattle, and DC, in which Judge Coffenor in Seattle already issued the temporary restraining order. We have birthright citizenship cases against some version of the Trump administration, from Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, to others in New Jersey, Northern District of California, Maryland, Massachusetts, Washington, and the rest. There are actually 7 birthright citizenship cases, not just the original 3, in 2 weeks. It's like gremlins, man. Feed them after dark, and hit them with water. We're just multiplying these lawsuits left and right. Yeah. So birthright citizenship, that's a win so far for the attorneys general, for the public interest groups representing groups like Indonesians in New Hampshire and things like that to try to defeat Donald Trump's using a pen, taking a magic marker to the Constitution effectively. Let's just write out the 14th Amendment, Section 1. Let's just write that out. And birthright citizenship. Yeah, no, not happening. I don't even think this United States Supreme Court is going to ultimately side with him on birthright citizenship, that he can deny a mother and a baby who come to a federal office and says, my child was, here's a birth certificate. My child was born on U.S. soil. I'm sorry. What is your status and the status of the father? I don't care if he was born, if he or she was born here. You know, you're not getting fill in the blank, food stamps, welfare, Social Security, student loans, any, chip for children's health care. You're not getting any of that. Why? Because Donald Trump told me you're not getting any of that. We're already seeing rebellion within the already breaking out like a firefight. In one of the cases I'm going to talk about tonight, the FBI and current members of the FBI are suing the Department of Justice and Donald Trump over their efforts to purge the FBI of anybody that touched anything related to Jan 6th, which is illegal, obviously. You've got the acting director of the FBI. I did a whole hot take on this one. Who basically told the Department of Justice and Emile Beauvais, who used to be Donald Trump's lead criminal lawyer. You know who we don't hear a lot about? Todd Blanche. What happened to Todd Blanche? Well, anyway, Emile Beauvais, as an acting whatever he's doing, he's writing all sorts of letters demanding all sorts of information about FBI agents to fire them, while Kash Patel tells the Senate and lies to them and says, I have no intent to use firings as political retribution. Bullshit. It's going on right now. So the acting director of the FBI, who used to work in the Newark, New Jersey, shout out to New Jersey, field office, told the Department of Justice and Emile Beauvais and people that showed up there to F off, to legal AF off, that he was not going to turn over the list. Now, they turned over a list finally today, but it was a list by badge number and by position, not giving the names, which because there's a new lawsuit filed by FBI agents anonymously, Jane and John Doe, or Agent Jane and John Doe, against Emile Beauvais and the Department of Justice, because again, FBI sits under the Department of Justice, to stop them from being fired, First Amendment violation, 14th Amendment violation, Administrative Procedures Act violation, and their rights of privacy. Because in one of the lawsuits, and there's not just one lawsuit, there are two separate lawsuits filed, back to my theme at the top of the Popok Live tonight, about flooding the zone, multiple lawsuits, different courts in the same place, two in the District of Columbia. By the way, you could have multiple cases filed in the same courthouse on the same floor. I've been involved with cases, one judge 3 doors down handling one case exactly the same as my case. Two different orders come out. Sometimes they overlap. Sometimes there's a distinction that has to be resolved by the appellate court. So two different cases filed. In one, they reproduced, I'll do a hot take on it for Legal AF tomorrow. They reproduced social media posts by pardoned Jan 6th insurrectionists who said, like Enrique Tarrio, who got sentenced for 22 years in prison, not because he was a Boy Scout or part of a choir, but because he led the charge to try to brain and maim members of law enforcement and try to assassinate legislators and their staff. But he got let out. He was partying in Miami the day that Donald Trump swore in. And now he's listing on his social media, because they're emboldened, that, and he has the names because he knows who his FBI agents were, that certain FBI agents by name should be prosecuted. So that's who's running Donald Trump's government now, the pardoned leaders of Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. They are now setting our policy, right? Right? The jailers are now jailed. The inmates are running the asylum. Fill in your comparison here. And so we've got the Department of Justice and the FBI duking it out. This is crazy. In broad daylight over this attempt to enforce. We've got Treasury Department officials who refused originally, in a show of courage, to refuse to let Elon Musk in to our payment system, okay, that controls $5 trillion worth of payments. If you're out there I'm not doing an ad for Popok, the Popok firm. If you're out there and you get food stamps, student loans, disability checks, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, or anything else like that, your check is in jeopardy. And your privacy information, your information about your privacy that you want to keep private is also in jeopardy. Things that by law, even the Internal Revenue Service can't access unless there's a proper need for it. It's a violation. Elon Musk just wandered in, wanted to get into the payment system and the proprietary software. And this official said, I don't think so. I've been doing this for 30 years successfully. I've been getting out all $5 trillion worth of checks every year that Congress allocates, and I'm not letting you have access to it. That's my artist rendering. I don't think it quite went that way, but it might have. There are members of Congress, led by Ben Frost, who are trying to get into the Treasury Department to find out what Doge is doing. So this guy got fired, who tried to be a firewall around our servers related to our payment system. So that's a profile in courage. The FBI director tells Emil Bove to F off. So does the director of the New York field office for the FBI. Same thing. You've got the head of U.S. AIDS, the chief of staff for U.S. AIDS, who was appointed by Donald Trump a week earlier, refused to fire 600 people and put the U.S. aid, which is our arm of the diplomacy that gives aid to the impoverished, promotes economic interest around the world, and helps with U.S. jobs. He refused to mothball it and close it, and it got closed, right? He said no, fired, dragged out. Now Marco Rubio's in charge of an agency that doesn't exist, cutting off funding immediately to all of those places. You've got the inspector. I did a hot take on this one. The inspector general for the agricultural department, who's also the first female chairperson of the inspectors general council. They dragged her out almost. 22 years in the job as an independent advocate, and then you've got Elon Musk, who has the balls, the temerity to look the American people in the eye. Actually, he doesn't look the American people in the eye because he's not confirmed by the Senate. He shouldn't have any of the powers that he has. And that's all going to be tested in this lawsuits. And he says, well, the reason we're doing all this is we're trying to get down to liberal fraud and corruption. Liberal fraud and corruption in these agencies. You know who ferrets out fraud and corruption in agencies and departments? Inspectors general. You know who Donald Trump just fired? All the inspectors general. So who's really interested in ferreting out fraud and corruption? Donald Trump and his administration? Or is it just a populist BS messaging in order to cover up for one of the most egregious abuses of power I've ever seen? And we're only 2 weeks into this administration. I said it after November 5th. We were going to watch Donald Trump and his administration lurch and careen from one abuse of power and constitutional crisis to another on almost a daily basis. And the good news about that, I know you're thinking, Popok, what's the good news about that? The silver lining is that will derail him because he has limited time and resources. I know it's an interminable period of time to wait for the end of 4 years for him to be done. It's less than 4 years now. It's 2 weeks short of 4 years. And he'll be lame duck if we do this right at midterms. He's got a limited amount of time. And the more his administration and its Department of Justice is tied up in all these crazy lawsuits every day, 3 times a day, the less they can do other things. It's already going to be a do-nothing Department of Justice with a do-nothing Civil Rights Division head. So you got all that going on, as all of his executive orders, most of them, are shot down along the way. So you got the birthright citizenship cases we talked about. We got the FBI agents who have brought their cases about their firing and all of that. Again, DC, class action, John and Jane Doe. We talked about that. First Amendment is at the core of that. Then we've got the cases related to that have been brought by the AFL-CIO of all unions. A group of unions have brought a case. This is now case 8 if you're playing at home, about Elon Musk's data violations and privacy violations because he's been given access to the Bureau of Fiscal Service, which is the keeper of the $5 trillion U.S. checkbook. Not only that not only are they the payor, they collect the money because the Internal Revenue Service is within the Bureau of Financial Service. That service has been on the books in one form or another since 1937 with FDR. It got combined into one entity by Tim Geithner, a Treasury Secretary during the 2008-2009 crisis. I think it was created in 2012, but there's always been a version of it. And that organization collects about $5 trillion, mainly through income tax and through other tariffs and things, gets all the money in the bank. And then as Congress allocates it and funds it and tells them who to pay, they pay. That's all the entitlements. That's why $3 trillion of that is your entitlements: Medicare, Medicaid, welfare, Social Security, all the things people didn't want to have jeopardized when they voted for Donald Trump. And so his trying to steal that data and get access and give that access to other people you've never even heard of, and I shouldn't even have to talk about, that work for outside consulting firms to get this delicate, sensitive information. That's the subject of this lawsuit by the federal workers, including parts of the ACLU, the AFL-CIO, is now before. That's also in DC as well, right? That's Privacy Act. That's Administrative Procedures Act again, and the rest. Then moving on to case 9 out of 31, we've got two different. Actually, this one's 2 federal workers. See, I told you, it doesn't always have to be a class action. Just 2 federal workers, Jane Doe and John Doe, who have sued Elon Musk and the government because of data harvesting that he's doing, because he has access to the Office of Personnel Management server and has been sending out emails from it. So he's got control somehow of hr@opm.gov, but that puts a tremendous amount of personal data at risk. So they've sued to disconnect him from the server at the Office of Personnel Management. That's, again, seeking a temporary restraining order. That's been filed in the District of Columbia, back to my thematic. Then we've got a case involved that just came out. I'm going to do this one now. Just came out as we're going on the air. Royce Lamperth, who I think is senior status and appointed by Reagan, of all people, maybe Bush, federal judge of the District of Columbia, who there's no love lost between him and the Trump administration, especially after the Jan 6 pardons. He just enjoined by temporary restraining order, as we were coming on the air, Donald Trump's mean-spirited, depraved, inhumane executive order that forces men who are transgender women who were once men. I guess the way to put it. Transgender women who were once men, who were housed until Donald Trump tried to change it, who were housed with women in the Bureau of Prisons, because you could just think what would happen to them in the general population of a male prison. I'll just leave it on that. And so Donald Trump decided, as part of anti-wokeness, as part of the elimination of DEI, while planes are dropping out of the sky on his watch, his concern is to make sure that that transgender women who used to be men are housed with men. And he issued an executive order that exactly did that, along with the ones about there's only 2 genders in America, get rid of transgender affirming care and for teenagers and all that stuff. It was all in there. It was all in those executive orders. And Royce Lamperth said, no, effectively, you're going to get people killed. And you're going to get people's rights, civil rights violated because you're not housing them in the right place. And you know or should know they're going to be killed or worse in a general population of men. And so he, stepping up, profile and courage, this is what federal judges get paid to do in the District of Columbia, has just entered that temporary restraining order. We got a whole nother case that's in Maryland that's been brought about Donald Trump's executive order to end gender affirming care for those 19 and under who have been cut off. Can you imagine you and your family are in the middle of this so intimate and personal decision to transition to another gender, right? Because that is who you believe you are, and that is who you are. And you're in the middle of it. You're about to get the next treatment, whatever that is, hormone treatment or on the way to a surgery, or whatever it is, or puberty blocker. And and the doctors, understandably, because they don't want to go to jail, say, you're done. We got an executive order and we can't do this any longer. Imagine, think about the lives, but Donald Trump never thinks about your life. I said this on a hot take recently. I'll leave it on this before we take our next quick break. Those in the Trump administration and Trump himself are so removed from the daily lives of the average American because of their billions and billions and billions of dollars. They haven't pumped gas ever. They don't shop in supermarkets. They don't have to make rent. They don't have to call a utilities company to get service put back on after a check bounced. They don't have to, right? They don't have any of these real world problems, and they haven't had them for years. So why would we think that those people care about the rest of us or are going to do public policy and public service in our own interest? I mean, somebody I used to work for who's now in the cabinet actually said during the confirmation hearing, I have more money than I'll ever need in my life. And so I'm now going to give back to public service. I'm not quite sure that's how that happened, but I got news for him. The rest of the 300 million Americans, other than the top 100 in this country, don't have enough money and haven't made enough money in their life and don't want to have a paycheck cut off because of a funding cutoff and don't want to have to worry about living check to check or where their child is going to sleep that night or where their senior parent or whatever, where they're going to get their health care from or where they're going to get their care from. But they're so removed. They ran on that's the disgusting thing about the Trump campaign. They ran on a populist message. I am you. You are me. We are us. Yeah, you're not. And you can tell by these executive orders that they're not. I'm going to cover not all the other 22 cases, but I am going to cover a few more cases and then transition to China, Canada, and Mexico eating Donald Trump's lunch when it came to that 24-hour trade war. Only on Popok Live. We're going to go to our last round of sponsors. So important to keeping the lights on here on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF. While we're here, while we're talking, hit the subscribe button for Midas Touch. Help them get to, I can't believe this number, 4 million. It was like a year and a half ago. We're doing a counter for 2 million, 4 million subscribers. And then help Legal AF, the YouTube channel, get to its 500,000 goal by its half birthday. You kind of do those two things. And now a word from our sponsors. You know what comes with New Year's resolutions? Exotic diet plans and supplements, which can increase the time you spend, well, in your bathroom, or as I call it, the marble library. Well, now when you're catching up on your reading or watching, you can also treat yourself at the same time with our next sponsor, Tushy. Now, before Tushy and its Wave bidet, I knew what a bidet was, of course, and I even knew how to pronounce it, and knew that it wasn't an awkwardly placed water fountain. But using one, I thought that was for a different type of person. And then I tried the Wave for the first time, and now I'm hooked. Nothing cleans faster and more completely down there than a Wave bidet. And it makes my bathroom have that luxury spa feeling I was going for, but at an amazing price point. Tushy gently removes 99% of bacteria while protecting your natural skin barrier thanks to one natural ingredient, fresh water. Tushy has 2 new ultra sleek bidet seats, Wave and Oasis, with front and rear wash to clean all those hard to reach places. The Tushy, Wave, and Oasis bidets easily attach to your existing toilet without the need for additional plumbing or electricity. They even have a quick release button to remove the seat for instant deep cleaning. Installation is simple. It takes about 10 minutes to complete. Literally anyone can do it. It's also easy to use. Sit, do your business, and then turn the knob for a refreshing stream of clean water. Once you're done, simply pat dry with toilet paper. People who have made the switch to Tushy use up to 80% less TP. Every Hello Tushy bidet comes with a 30-day hassle-free return and a 12-month warranty. There's still time to get your ass right for life. For a limited time, our listeners get 10% off their first bidet order when you use code LegalAF at checkout. That's 10% off your first bidet order at HelloTushy.com with promo code LegalAF. I may be very open with you on this podcast, but off the air, I really do value my privacy. And it's 2025. Are your blinds still from 2005? There's a better way to buy blinds, shades, shutters, and drapery, and it's called 3-Day Blinds. They are the leading manufacturer of high-quality custom window treatments in the U.S. And right now, if you use my URL, 3dayblinds.com/legalaf, they're running a buy one, get one 50% off deal. We can shop for almost anything at home. Why not shop for blinds at home too? 3-Day Blinds has local professionally trained design consultants who have an average of over 10 years of experience that provide expert guidance on the right blinds for you in the comfort of your home. Just set up an appointment and you'll get a free, no obligation quote the same day. Not very handy? DIY projects can be fun, but measuring and installing blinds can be a big challenge. The expert team at 3-Day Blinds handles all the heavy lifting. They design, measure, and install so you can sit back, relax, and leave it to the pros. It's 2025, and so much of my house is smart with Alexa, but I never thought about getting my blinds connected to Alexa too, so I can just say, Alexa, open the blinds each morning. With 3-Day Blinds, you choose from thousands of options that fit any budget or style, and with actual samples, you won't be guessing about what your blinds will look like. 3-Day Blinds has been in business for over 45 years, and they have helped over 2 million people get the window treatments of their dreams. So they are a brand you can trust. Right now, get quality window treatments that fit your budget with 3-Day Blinds. Head to 3dayblinds.com/legalaf for their buy one, get one 50% off deal on custom blinds, shades, shutters, and drapery. For a free, no charge, no obligation consultation, just head to 3dayblinds.com/legalaf. One last time, that's buy one, get one 50% off when you head to the number 3 dayblinds.com/legalaf. Thank you to our pro-democracy sponsors, and welcome back to Popok Live. We're in the home stretch, Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Time here on the Midas Touch Network. Brand new podcast. We're going to be we've been doing the video here version of it, but very soon we're going to be launching sort of a full-blown podcast, same name, new photo. That's going to go up on audio as well. I thought it'd be helpful, and I saw some comments on it. If you want to do, kind of keep track of the litigation, a very good place to do it. We thought about building this for ourselves, but Norm Eisen does a very good job of it on Just Security. Go to justsecurity.org. and you'll see his litigation tracker of legal challenges to the Trump administrative actions. Many of the cases that I'm talking about, you can find outlined there. I'm going to run through a number of them just so you can see and hopefully take some comfort and solace by how rapidly the response team is, the triage team is for democracy here. And how, again, I'm telling you that Donald Trump's going to see he's going to get hoisted on his own petard of the DC courts. Keep an eye on them. I'm going to keep an eye on them closely. Wait till you start seeing, for instance, Tanya Chutkan, who presided over his DC election interference case, start handling some of these administrative procedure cases, or Amy Berman Jackson, or Amit Mehta, or fill in the blank. I mean, or Judge Catelli. They're just waiting. I mean, I'm sure they're sharpening their knives, waiting to get a case randomly assigned to them. So just going through, and he's organized it well. I like this. He's done like by grouped it by topical. So on executive action, birthright citizenship, on that executive order, we have I'll just do it by courts. We've got District of New Hampshire, District of Massachusetts, 2 cases in the District of Massachusetts, 1 in Maryland, 1 in Washington State, 1 in with the District of Columbia, and 1 in California. And we've already got, of course, I said the temporary restraining order out of Judge Coffenor in Washington. On immigration policy, we haven't talked about it. I will pick up with it on Popok Live and next week, and on Hot Takes. But there's a tremendous amount of litigation that's going on about sanctuary city attack by Donald Trump, and trying to punish sanctuary cities and states, which is what it sounds like. It's basically blue states and cities that are like, no, we're not helping you deport people. We're not helping you chase human beings through churches and schools and supermarkets, like it's some perverse new sequel to the Purge. We're not doing that. And of course, Donald Trump wants to go after them. So we have a case that's been filed in the Northern District of Illinois to challenge that. And the dates on these cases are all like, January 20th, January 8th, January 30th, February 1. We then on expedited removal, another immigration policy that harms the undocumented and violates their due process rights. We've got 2 cases in the District of Columbia that have been filed. One on January 22nd, one on February 3rd, on the discontinuation. This is so mean-spirited, of the CBP One app, which was an app that was implemented by the Biden administration at the border, the southern border, to allow people to schedule their appointments. Kristi Noem killed it because they don't want to schedule appointments. They don't want to make it easy on people. Sure, force them to come through barbed wire fences and climb and go drown in the Rio Grande. That's much better for a civilized democracy like America. So that was filed there. Then we've got that was filed on January 23rd. Then we've got, listen to this. They're denying lawyer access to immigrants in detention. How unconstitutional of you. How violative of due process are you? That's been filed again in District of Columbia in D.C. Then we've got Donald Trump trying to use Schedule F to hollow out civil servants and get more of them fired in a retribution way when they're not allowed to be filed. That generated 3 separate lawsuits, 2 in the District of Columbia and 1 in Maryland between January 20th and January 29th. We've got a couple of cases about whether Doge is even a proper part of the government or not. 2 filed in the District of Columbia on the same day, January 20th, Inauguration Day. Then we've got 2 others that were filed. So actually 4. There's 4 cases filed about Doge, all on the 20th of January. Then we've got a case involving the disclosure of personal and financial records by Doge. That was filed on Feb 3 in D.C. We've got the temporary pause of federal funds to states and not-for-profits, the illegal impoundment by Donald Trump. That's resulted in 2 separate cases, one in Rhode Island, where Judge McConnell, has issued a temporary restraining order, finding that the Trump administration effectively are liars about the fact that they're totally unqualified. The youngest press secretary ever, Levette, lied. Well, she didn't lie. She told the truth. She posted on social media that, that thing we said where we're going to unfreeze the freeze and we're going to not freeze the funds, disregard that. The funds are still frozen. Well, the judge says, right. And that's why I have jurisdiction to enter a temporary restraining order to stop you from doing that and stop you from harming hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who will rely on federal funding for their livelihood, right? So you got 2 different cases. We just got a temporary restraining order in the second case today, issued by Judge Ali Khan in D.C., who also relied on the Rhode Island case, but also said, I don't like this press secretary's statement either. And it's an indication that the Trump administration is not telling the truth, is lying to courts, and I'm going to enjoin that. So both of them have issued restraining orders, stopping it. So for right now, the federal spigots are back on for not-for-profit organizations and states that rely on federal funding, and that means you and me. For now, subject to a preliminary injunction hearing, which I expect to take place in the next 2 to 3 weeks, then subject to 2 separate appellate tracks, one for the First Circuit up in New Hampshire and the other one in the D.C. Court of Appeals, and then somehow getting to the United States Supreme Court, all within the next 90 days, and we'll follow it here. We've got a new case that was filed on February 3rd by the Alliance for Retired Americans against the Treasury Secretary for giving Elon Musk access to those servers I talked to you about at the bureau that's responsible for making payments. Let's see what else. We've got The executive action I just talked to you about housing of transgender inmates, resulting in the new temporary restraining order that just came out today in Doe versus McHenry by Judge Lamperth. We've got we've got a lawsuit that was filed to stop immigration enforcement from going into churches to go round up undocumented. Think about I talked about sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. What's more of a sanctuary than a church? We actually have to go to court to stop raids in churches. That case is pending in the District of Maryland. That was filed on January 27th. We've got the DEI lawsuits that have been filed against Donald Trump, also in the District of Maryland. There's about 4 different cases on DEI. You see where this is going? All right, I want to switch gears now and round out Popok Live and talk about trade wars. Put on my Wall Street hat. Let me start it this way. Donald Trump doesn't understand trade. He doesn't understand tariffs. Neither do the people around him. You cannot tariff your way to a properly functioning U.S. economy. And it's also a depraved way to destabilize our allies at the time when we need them for other things like intelligence gathering and national security, and just having the global economy hum in the right direction. It's so bad that we are 2 weeks into the Trump administration, and JP Morgan Chase and other Wall Street analysts have taken a look at his actions, and they've said that the Trump administration is not business friendly. I thought that's how he got elected, that he's a business person and he knows how to run a company. Therefore, he knows how to run a government, not to Wall Street where it matters. And the trade war is over, and Canada, Mexico, and China won. Okay? I thought that it was non-negotiable. I thought it was really important. Listen to this BS. It was really important. Let's stay with Canada for a minute. Canada is allowing in fentanyl, and we have fentanyl overdoses in this country. We got to get to the bottom of fentanyl interdiction in Canada and make them do it and stop illegal immigrants. I'm just staying in Canada for a minute. And we've been subsidizing them with $200 billion. I don't even know what he's talking about. There is almost $1 trillion worth of trade between Canada and the United States, thank God. We are ahead in service economy. In other words, technology, AI, consulting companies, law firms, management firms, consulting firms that provide provide services to Canada. We're slightly ahead in that trade. They're slightly ahead, slightly, like $50 billion. That's all. And in a $1 trillion back and forth, that's not a lot of money. They're slightly ahead on goods because what they sell to us is really, really expensive, like rare earth metals and minerals and natural resources and utilities and power and electric that's used by our factories and our manufacturing plant to make our products. And there is no fentanyl problem in Canada. There's no interdiction problem in Canada. If you think I'm making it up, 48 total pounds of fentanyl were stopped at the border last year in Canada. 48. That's like that's like half a suitcase. That's literally half a suitcase. Now, Mexico, I'll get to in a minute. Different issue. 20,000 pounds. 48 pounds, like one person in one suitcase. You ever see that show on Hulu or Netflix where it's the drug agents at customs and immigration around the world, and they stop people that have like smuggled cocaine in a baby, bottle washer thing, whatever, or a suitcase, secret compartments. That's it. And immigration, there's not a porous border at Canada. Has Donald Trump and the people in his administration ever visited Canada? I don't mean on private jet. I mean, have they ever visited Canada? I have. Yeah. It's one of the only countries where the U.S. Border Patrol is on their side of the border. You can actually check out from the airport in the U.S., to the U.S. from Canada. You're stamped in Canada. Between them and their immigration and their Royal Mounted Police, they don't have that problem. So for J.D. Vance, who's allegedly smart, although who's seen him lately? I haven't seen him lately. Is he like in a bunker? Is he the last survivor? What's going on here? They say, I like Canada. I have Canadian friends. Oh, here we go. But, we got to get to the bottom of fentanyl. Are you like insane? No, because it's a false narrative that they use in order to shove these things down our throat. And who won the trade war? Trudeau. And Ontario's premier, Doug Ford, who ripped up his contract with Starlink and said, we don't need a $70 million US Starlink contract to give remote Ontarians internet. We'll do without it because we're not going to do business with somebody that's trying to wreck the Canadian economy or the world economy for that matter. So service is a way for Canada to fire back at us. They already imposed their own tariffs. I mean, there's a 30-day cooling off period to allow them to reload on which tariffs they're going to hit us with at the end of the 30 days. They said, oh, we'll help with a little interdiction, but we're also going to hit you with a 20% tariff on things that matter to you. Energy, right? Coal, things that matter. So we have that going on. So that's a win for Trudeau and for Ontario. And it's a non-existent trade deficit. It had $1 trillion. They have a $50 billion on either side of the aisle. Doesn't matter. It's a false story. It's a wag the dog. It's not a thing. It's a thing for Donald Trump to act like a tough guy in North America. And in Mexico, who among us doesn't believe that Claudia Sheinbaum didn't eat Donald Trump's lunch on the bus stop? Right? I want to change the Constitution. I'll join with the Heritage Foundation and the Federalists. I want to change it to make Claudia Sheinbaum our president. Okay? She's tougher than he is. He's saying Gulf of America. She's up at a map in front of her own people saying, why don't we go back to the original name for United States? Mexico America. Sounds great. You know, he says you're a member of a narco cartel. She says, kiss your automotive industry and the assembly plants and the parts manufactured in Mexico. Goodbye. Yeah, because Donald Trump doesn't understand the world economy. He doesn't understand that Japan uses Mexico to build and assemble electronics, and they're an ally. He doesn't understand that U.S. Domestic car manufacturing is done a lot in Mexico. And if you tariff your way without warning, all you're going to do is have retaliatory tariffs on the way back as you crash the U.S. economy. And she has a phone call with him and says she'll put 100,000 new troops on a border, for a border that's already been secured by Biden before he left office. I'll do that, and in return, I got another 30 days. She's reloading. She's reloading on how she's going to ring fence and protect her economy, and now have an extra 30 days of planning because she's smarter than Donald Trump, because she's got sharper elbows than Donald Trump, because she grew up at the knee of leaders of Mexican politics. I've said this with admiration. She's the Nancy Pelosi of Mexico, and nobody strong-armed Nancy Pelosi, not even Donald Trump. So that happened. And then China said, you want to tariff us? Fine. 20, what's your number? 10%? We'll see your 10%. We'll raise you 15% on liquefied natural gas, on farm equipment, and on oil. How about that? You like that? And Donald Trump said, well, I'm going to have a phone call with the president of China. I'm going to get to the bottom of it. Get to the bottom of what? I'm going to say this one more time. I'm not frustrated at our audience. I'm just frustrated. When Donald Trump and the State Department for Donald Trump pulls us out of the world economy and out of the diplomacy that goes with helping those in third world and second world countries, the impoverished, the famine relief, healthcare, and the rest. When we pull out, not only are we taking away U.S. jobs that are backing all those things, but we are playing into the hands of the Chinese and the Russians, who are going to gladly step forward and fill the gap. We don't want to build the bridge or the infrastructure, the power plant in Panama. China will. We don't want to do inoculations and vaccinations and food and show people how to take dirt and sand and turn it into farm and fertile land. The Russians will do it. The Chinese will do it. The reason you can't run, I know they love America first, America's for Americans. That's terrific, except we're interconnected in a flat, hot world in a global economy. And you're supposed to be using our powerful economics as a lever to support democracy around the world and to protect our national security and interests. not give the Chinese the ability to stroke their own checks to get people on their side. That's why we've lost the African continent to Russia and China, because we ignored it for so long, because we pulled away from diplomacy and we pulled away from funding. So all we're doing is, this is not even a joke anymore. Donald Trump is a successful unifier. All of his people are like, Donald Trump's going, he is. He's unifying the world and its economy against America very, very successfully. All of those countries, our NATO allies, our allies, all the ones that are literally laughing at him on the phone, are creating their own trade organizations, their own currency exchange. They're looking away from the West, and they're looking to the East, and they're looking to China and Russia, who will more than willingly, in order to get a sphere of influence, use their dollars and their yen and their ruble to do so. And this is another failing of Trump. There is no Trump doctrine. There is no, erratic is not a doctrine. Chaos is not a doctrine, domestic or foreign. All it's going to do is crush America domestically and in foreign policy. We are supposed to be the leaders of the free world. That used to be a thing. We used to be, our brand of democracy is a shining light, but not in the hands of Donald Trump. We're not making any new democracies around the world. We're not strengthening any new existing democracies, around the world. What are we doing? We're emboldening our enemies. We're showing that we're being run by an executive who lacks executive function, right? Who Scaramucci once said is literally insane. And what do you think our enemies see in that? Right? They are emboldened because he's erratic, and because he can be easily, and the American people can be easily misled through social media and campaigns and things like that. I mean, he just made an announcement. He solved the TikTok problem, potentially, using your and my money. He's going to use your and my money, because he doesn't pay taxes, your and my money, to create a sovereign wealth fund for the United States, which, by the way, the Biden administration was considering, in order to take taxpayer dollars and other funds and revenue, divert it away from where it can do some good, which is helping Americans and those that voted for him, and diverting it to a sovereign wealth fund under the Treasury, and then use the money in the sovereign wealth fund to help buy the TikTok. So we're going to own TikTok now. That's what I want billions of dollars to be spent on. Why? Because it's Donald Trump's pet project? We need to buy trillions of dollars of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency because it's Donald Trump's hobby? If he wanted a hobby, he should stay on the golf course and not have run for office. So we're going to continue to follow everything at the intersection of law, politics, national security, and our financial capital markets. And we do it in a couple of places, right here on the Midas Touch Network. Right? But there's so much to talk about at the intersection, as you can see, at the intersection of law and politics, that not only did I launch the Popok live show, but we've been building Legal AF for this moment. This is the break the glass moment. You want to feel like you're in law school or a TED Talk? You want to know more about these 31 lawsuits today? Next week, I'll be talking about another 7. The week after that, another 20. Me, the commentators that I bring on and I've onboarded on to Legal AF are doing that 6, 8, 10 videos a day through the weekend. Yeah. All curated for you at the intersection of law and politics. Come over to Legal AF. Legal AF MTN for Midas Touch Network. That's our DNA. We do it in collaboration with them and help us continue to grow that channel. Take a moment after the end of Popok Live. Come over there. It's free. It's effortless. Use your finger. Hit subscribe. I keep saying it's a blue subscribe button. I guess it's not. But anyway, hit the subscribe button and we'll see the numbers. I really want to I've told Salty, we're going to hit 450, I think, by tomorrow. I want to hit 500,000 in the middle of February at the latest, really at the latest. And then finally, just the last announcement, everybody knows, I'm putting all of my, on the legal side, all of my efforts into a new law firm. I just found it on the shoulders, if you will, of Legal AF. called The Popok Firm. What else? ThePopokFirm.com. 1-877 Popok AF. We're fighting for justice. I'm doing it in collaboration with some amazing lawyers who have billions of dollars of recoveries for people just like you around the country. If you've been injured, of course, in a or anybody in your family in things like medical malpractice, car accidents, trucks, anything motor vehicle, anything related to civil rights, constitutional rights, employment discrimination, you know where to go if you've been injured right there. And this great group of lawyers from Big Auto, right by my side. I couldn't think of a better group to stand this law firm up with than them. There's a free case evaluation form. There's people standing by, as they say, on the 1-877 number. And if you've got a case and we elect to take it, we don't get paid unless you do. I almost said it the other way. We don't get paid unless you do. It's that kind of law firm, thepopokfirm.com. So I really appreciate everybody being here, and I will see you on the midweek edition of Legal AF on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern time right here. Saturday, I do the show with, of course, Ben Mycelis, my co-founder and great friend. And then right here, Popok Live on Tuesdays, and over on Legal AF, the YouTube channel. So until then, thank you for joining Popok Live and making it a success. We literally could not have done it without you. We're humbled by it. And shout out to the Legal AFers and the Midas Mighty.